I represent the state of Vermont, and this is my opportunity on behalf of the Vermonters I represent to talk about a couple of issues related to the decommissioning of Vermont Yankee, an Entergy plant. A little bit of background, as I understand it, this is the first merchant plant that is going through the decommissioning process. It's long involved, expensive, and obviously very consequential to Vermont. It's going to cost, by current estimates, $1.242 billion, and that's going to take decades to be accomplished. But there's two recurring issues that I think it's timely to discuss with you, not just because of the implications they have for Vermont, but for this process going forward of decommissioning plants. It's new, and you're going to have to make some critical decisions. The two issues that have emerged in Vermont are, one, public participation, and how extensive will that be, or how limited will it be? And then second are decisions that your commission must make about the use of the decommissioning fund. And there's an inherent conflict to some extent between the merchant generator, in this case Entergy, which wants to put as many costs on that as possible, and the community that wants strict limitations related to managing the radioactive contamination situation. Just a couple of things. And on the question of local community involvement, the nuclear industry is involved through the NEI, as you know. And recently, the Commission had a teleconference that lasted several hours. About 2.5 hours were devoted to hearing from NEI, which was essentially Entergy, and only 20 minutes for the Vermont Public Service Department. We've got a governor who's very engaged, Vermont Public Service Department is very engaged, and of course this community in southern Vermont, it's critical what's going to happen. So the question I have for you, I want to finish with my statement here, is how extensive are you going to allow legitimate public representatives to have a seat at the table? Right now it appears to be almost limited to the public comment period, and I'm sure you read the comments and take those into account. But when there's an actual discussion, having our Attorney General or our Public Service Department that's appointed by our governor, and certainly community representatives from southern Vermont area, is really consequential to considering the decision, getting evidence for the decisions you're going to make. Second, the decommissioning fund. How is that trust fund going to be used? Among the positions advocated by Entergy was to allow for spent fuel management and to store this in dry cask. And they're trying to put, they're also asking for attorney fees to be paid, membership dues, and NEI. And our view is that this should be strictly tied to the purposes that are allowed by the statute. So the two things, as I mentioned, that we're really seeking in Vermont is, one, a seat at the table for legitimate representatives of the community and the state through the Public Service Department, and number two, strict monitoring of in limited uses of the decommissioning fund itself. And then finally, this whole question of safe store, which will have a 59-year lifespan minimum, means that site restoration is going to be postponed literally for generations. And there's a real big question as to whether or not we should try to proceed with decommissioning sooner rather than later, in 5 years rather than 60 years. So that's my opportunity to speak to you on something that's of enormous concern to our governor, down to the select boards in the region of southern Vermont where Entergy is exposed. So, Mr. Commissioner, I'll start with you. Thank you all for your service. What can you tell me that I can tell my governor and my select boards about their ability to have a seat at the table in an ongoing way as this decommissioning unfolds?
And you have 5 seconds to do that. No.
But thank you.
Thank you for the question. there are, I think what the NRC tries to do is ensure through part of its oversight program that there are opportunities for public engagement, public information, and the like. There are, and for example, I believe the Attorney General has sought to intervene or raise contentions in proceedings. So in one of our proceedings, particularly, I think actually related to the decommissioning, some of the decommissioning funding issues. So that is a more formal opportunity to participate, and that is a real, to the extent that there are issues that are within the scope of the particular action under consideration, the amendment, the license, or the like. Those are, I think, real opportunities to participate. With respect to Safe Store, our regulations allow for different options for decommissioning, and that includes Safe Store, which is a longer period of, in effect, in situ, if you will, stabilization of the facility until ultimate decommissioning occurs. From the NRC standpoint and the safety standpoint, we believe that is a safe and a legitimate way to go. And a lot of I think whether other means, for example, a more immediate decommissioning occurs, is probably more a matter of the dialogue between the state and the company itself, because we have found the Safe Store is legitimate.
Well, legitimate, but you understand there's a huge price that the community pays for that. You basically have this very important facility and location, in this case along the banks of the Connecticut River, that essentially cannot be used or developed. And there's an enormous economic impact on a community when it loses the jobs associated with it, a nuclear plant. And that's something they're going to have to contend with. And the aspect of your answer that is of some concern to me is, yes, you come to the conclusion that that's safe, but the question I'm asking is, are there other safe ways to do this that don't impose such an ongoing burden on the community where they can't use this resource and redevelop it?
The gentleman's time's close, way over, but if the chairman would respond.
Essentially, the options are primarily a Safe Store or going to a more immediate decommissioning.
Right.
But again, the NRC, because it has found either of those options to be a safe option, we don't compel one versus the other.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The reason I do
no, it's very important to you, I know.
Is that this is going to face all of us who have any kind of nuclear facility, and having a legitimate way for the community to be heard through their representatives, I think, is absolutely essential to the decommissioning process.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I take just 10 seconds to add one?
If you take 10 seconds, I got my colleagues who have been waiting patiently.
I just want to make sure that Mr. Welch knows we now have initiated a rulemaking to take a fresh look at a number of these issues, including what is the appropriate role for state and local governments and the public, when is the current level of public participation adequate, and also looking at this question of, right now there are these three options generally for decommissioning, including Safe Store. Is that appropriate, or is that something we should reconsider? We're going to have an advance notice of proposed rulemaking looking at those and other decommissioning issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, now I recognize the gentleman from Texas.